This is an HR program on demand, a living seed capsule of work life and workplace coming live from a rooftop in Stockholm, Sweden. It's me, Ann-Marie Andrich, and
me, Katarina Berg.
A vodcast, if you like, on HR, straight across the counter. Sponsored by HR The Real Deal, HR by HR for HR. Hello, Lynn.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I'm so glad that you are here and that you brought the sun to the rooftop finally.
Well, of course, it is a sunny morning.
It is.
And when talking about mental health, I feel like we should definitely have the sun.
Definitely. Exactly. We're talking about mental health this time, and you're heading up the heart and soul at Spotify. And I'm so curious to hear what you're doing in that space. But first, before we move into digging deep into that area, why don't you share with the listeners and the viewers, who is Lynn and what is your role?
Yes, I'm happy to. My name is Lynn. I've been at Spotify for close to 9 years. So it's been a while, it's been a journey. And I lead up our mental health initiative, Heart and Soul, that has been live almost for 4 years. And we sit within the diversity, inclusion and belonging team.
Right.
And of course, that says nothing about who I am as a person, besides working at Spotify. I'm also a mom to 2 young boys, married to my lovely Brazilian husband. But yeah, mental health is kind of where my passion lies.
As you said, you started 9 years ago, and I know that you've had an interesting career up until when you started, let's say, rolling out and working with Heart and Soul. What did you do before?
So when I joined almost 9 years ago, I joined as an HR specialist in the HR specialist team, and I did that role for a couple of years. And then when I came back about to come back from my second parental leave, I got a phone call from my colleagues asking if I wanted to do something in the space of mental health.
Right.
Which was basically back then just kind of a blank paper. There was nothing on. It was more like, we want to do something. We feel like mental health is something we really want to take a responsibility in, but what that would look like and how to go about it, I didn't know. So I was actually a little bit reluctant at first.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is interesting. So you came back from from parental leave 4 years ago. And why 4 years ago was that on the table? Why was that a topic for you at Spotify?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So I think there were a couple of things that was kind of on the agenda back then that several HR teams saw a pattern on. So we had the employee-facing team, HR business partner, HR specialist that saw that a lot of the cases coming to them, their concerns was connected to mental health issues.
Right.
Our benefits team could also see that the way that our insurances were used was also very much mental health related. So there were a couple of patterns. And of course, these are not like in any way kind of just for Spotify. There's also the trend externally that we saw also that like mental health concerns were just spiking. So I think there were definitely a couple of different patterns across the business as well as externally that kind of told us, well, there's really something that we should take an active role on when it comes to, as an employer, we have a big opportunity when it comes to supporting people's mental health.
Exactly. And also a responsibility here.
Exactly.
Sorry. So interesting. Okay, 4 years ago, big topic, white piece of paper, basically, starting from scratch. How did you do it?
So we started understanding like what are the opportunities within the business and what are the needs and thoughts that our employees are having. So we ran focus groups. We had 10 focus groups with approximately about 100 employees that wanted to contribute to this space. So we asked them, like, when you were going through something difficult, what was the support that you had in place that was helpful? And what was the support that, looking back now, you did not have, but that you wish that you had? And what kind of support did you potentially have from your employer and so forth? So we ran those focus groups to really understand, like, what would our employees want to see? And we also did a lot of research externally, just understanding like what is the data telling us? What is the research telling us about mental health? And then we kind of decided our scope of work. Like what do we believe in? We have kind of a legal obligation to a certain extent, but as a company, we want to do way more than that. Because in the end of the day, the time we spend at work is significant. And if we're not well, either due to work or because of other reasons at home, we're going to bring those experiences with us to work. And we really felt like we want to take a bigger responsibility beyond those legal obligations.
Right. And I like the fact that you were, again, working through the organization, asking for input, asking for feedback from your employees, from the Spotifyers, right?
Yeah.
And then, so what happened then? So you got all of that input. How did you start working with this?
Yeah.
If you were to describe what in the area of heart and soul are you doing? That's one question. The other question is that I just came up with now is we haven't touched upon is why heart and soul? Because but you call the team heart and soul, right? Yeah,
we do.
So why?
Great question. Yeah. So what we also said was like, since this was a new area 4 years ago, we're thinking that maybe for some people, just talking about mental health at work would feel strange.
Yeah.
Like, why? So we said like it might be easier for people to grasp the area if we name it.
Right.
If we create a brand around it, a recognition, and just package everything that's connected to mental health within a name.
Right.
And that name was actually brought up by HR folks, our colleagues. We went to our colleagues and asked, do you have some names in mind?
What should we call us?
Exactly. Yeah. And we voted, and Heart and Soul won. So it's just really asking for input.
Right. And a great name.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really great. And I think when you hear it, heart and soul, you immediately understand also what it covers, right?
Yeah, what it's about.
So it's very descriptive in that sense. Okay, brilliant. So we sorted that out.
Yes.
Now back to my initial question. So what are the areas now that you're working on and how are you working with it?
Yes. So just taking one step back, before we launched, my belief has always been that like this cannot just be an HR initiative driven from kind of the headquarters.
Right.
Because we're a global organization. We're present across the globe. And also when you think about mental health and mental health stigma, the way that you approach mental health, let's say in Japan versus US, UK, Sweden, wherever you are, it's going to look very, very different.
Right.
And if you really want to create change, you need to understand those kind of local differences and how to navigate the area. So we brought on an ambassador team before we launched. So back then, 4 years ago, this was 15 people that were passionate about mental health, that brought their own mental health experiences and now wanted to make a change in this space. So we brought that team together and we built out that foundation with them because they are out in the business. They understand the culture, the conversations, and how to bring this topic. I don't know all the different local culture differences in every single country or office. So they were really the champions and are still today. So just taking one step back to kind of...
So you still have that champion group?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but the ambassador team has expanded. So from 15 ambassadors in 2018, we are now 65 ambassadors across the globe.
And that's also because you're growing as a company, right?
We're growing as a company, exactly. And the demand of mental health support has increased a lot these past couple of years. I think in 2018, no one kind of expected that an employer would take such a massive responsibility when it comes to mental health and mental illness. Today it looks very different. Today most companies want to support their employees' mental health because of what has happened in the past years with the pandemic and now the war. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that's just a little bit about kind of our philosophy and our ways of working. It's really through this ambassador team that really show up every day, advocating for this work, role modeling healthy behaviors. They're also trained mental health first aiders. So if you have a concern and you feel like, I don't want to bring this to my manager, it feels maybe too big to come to HR, you can come to a mental health first aider. And they are not therapists, but they are trained to have a non-judgmental conversation, to listen proactively, and to signpost you to further resources.
Love it. How do you train those mental health first aiders?
Yes.
Was it? Yeah.
A long word.
Yes.
Yes, so there's an international recognized organization that where you go through. So we train everyone also for their sake, because they are exposed in the organization. Like, people look to them for support. They're driving issues around mental health, which is sometimes complex and difficult and can be difficult. So we want to make sure that they are supported and they have the skills to drive this work. So that's why it's really important that they go through the relevant training, but also that they are being offered support in their role. So that they can also, we make sure that we look after them because they look after others.
Exactly. Brilliant. I just love that. And I love also the fact that you say that sometimes maybe you don't want to go to your manager, and sometimes maybe you actually, even though you have a good relationship with your HR business partner, you don't want to talk about that there either, right?
No.
So I think that this group of people that you have sounds like a great complement and help, clearly. So what's on the agenda now? What are the focus areas for you now?
So for 2022, and now just again, like, we've built the kind of foundation. We covered a lot of different areas, from both experiencing positive mental health, so talking about compassion, sleep, resilience, body positivity, to anxiety, depression. If you live with a mental health condition, what does that look like, to suicide prevention? So that's kind of some of the topics that we've covered during these couple of years. This year specifically, we're kind of broaden and deepen our scope and responsibility as an employer. So a big initiative that we've been running for the past kind of year and just launched a couple of weeks ago is a domestic abuse support program, global, to recognize that domestic abuse is prevalent. And it's actually 1 in 3 women will experience domestic abuse and 1 in 6 men. And most often you tend to disclose in your workplace. And you as an employer do have a massive opportunity to support people of domestic abuse. So that's one of the areas that we're really proud that Spotify is recognizing and supporting. So that's one of the areas. And another area is around substance misuse and abuse, which is also unfortunately an area that has increased massively during the last couple of years because of the pandemic.
Exactly. And I was just going to ask you, I'm sure that some of the things that you're focusing on now are also learnings on what happened with our mental health during the pandemic when we were in social isolation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so inspiring. So, before we wrap up, Lynn, what would you say during these 4 years that you've been working with this now? And I see the glow in your face when you talk about your work, so it's clearly the right person in the right space. What would you say have been the biggest learnings for you and Spotify as you were moving into this space and also building it out and continue to build it out?
I think the one and the main learning, the biggest learning, I think it's really if another company would want to start, bring the people with you. I think that's really how you can make such a massive change, because no matter the company or organization, there are people out there with their personal experiences that they've gone through and now want to bring those experiences and support others and make a change. So bring the people with you. And there's a lot of knowledge and experiences out there. So I would say that's, if I can only say one, that would be my number one. But to say a couple of more things, it's really about keeping the momentum. It's not about an awareness day once a year.
Exactly.
Because that's never going to create change. That can be an opportunity for you to maybe amplify the work you do, but you really need to keep the momentum. How do you make sure that you embed the narrative of mental health support into everything that you do? So if it's development talk, your weekly check-ins, how you show up at work, do you respect each other's boundaries? And mental health support looks very different. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
No.
Like what works for me is not going to work for you. It's something else, and we need to recognize that. And we need to recognize that access to mental health support also looks very different depending on how you identify, depending on the community that you are part of. So really understanding that as well, I think it's been one of our learnings. And you know, we're never done as a company. You will never be done with driving mental health. Like I would want to say something to not do is not to do it as a project or a program. It is an initiative. It is part of your culture.
Definitely.
It needs to be part of the culture. Otherwise, it won't feel genuine. It won't succeed.
Fantastic. And I think just the way that you phrase it, I think also just taking away that stigma, having
Exactly.
people in the organization talk about it and do that on a regular basis. And I think to your point, don't make it like a one-time event. This is something that needs to happen every day. Yeah. And maybe also why Heart and Soul is embedded in your total DIBS philosophy, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It is really a vital part of creating a sense of belonging in the workplace. I should feel like I belong here on days when I'm thriving, and on days when I feel like I actually don't want to show up. But then it's okay to show up because I can tell my colleagues or my manager that, I'm going through a rough time.
Yeah.
And we're all going to experience that.
Definitely.
Because that's just part of being a human, being alive and living.
That's part of life.
It is.
It is, for sure. Oh, so inspiring, Lynn. And I have to say, the sparkle in your eyes, it just says everything. Spotify is lucky to have you, for sure. Thank you so very much for the inspiration and the food for thought and the recommendations for, the others out there who maybe would like to start something like this. Thank you. You know how we close these vlogs? You do?
Yes.
With the 3 things?
Yes.
Would you be kind enough to close the session with us?
Yes.
Could you?
I can.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you. Stay strong, stay safe, stay active. Ida Modalia.
Very good, Lynn.